This is
Cast.
Hello there, and welcome to a brand new episode of my podcast, Podcast Racing. Today, I'm going to be talking about 80s movies, a decade of movies in which I was not born, I was not alive, and yet I still have a certain nostalgia for many of these movies because I watched them as a kid. I'm going to be talking about 80s movies today with my good friend Cece. How are you doing, Cece?
I'm great. Thanks for having me, and I am really excited to talk about this. I feel like, yeah, it's an interesting time because like we weren't born, but I feel like there's a lot of nostalgia, especially also because like a lot of, at least for me, like my mom and my stepdad are very nostalgic about the 80s, so like
Yeah.
they've shown me a lot of stuff.
Yeah,
So
yeah. Same with my parents. Yeah, my parents were definitely yeah, my parents were in their like teens or 20s during the 80s. So yeah, that's definitely a very nostalgic time for them as well. And I think because they are nostalgic for it, they shared a lot of these movies with me, and so that's where I get like my sense of nostalgia from watching these as many of these as a kid alongside with my parents and really enjoying them as much as they did when they first saw them.
yeah, exactly. Same.
Yeah, so why don't we get right into it? Why don't you go ahead and please share with us your number 10 film?
Okay. Okay. So this was hard because I feel like once I knew my top few like pretty quickly, but the last few were hard to sort of sort out. I'm gonna pick for my number 10, Never Ending Story. I feel like it was probably popular then, but I don't know if it's like as popular as like our generation being like, oh yeah, that's like an 80s movie that I would watch. Because it's kind of like an 80s like kids movie slash adventure movie, and it's kind of like has a lot of special effects that are really like they look really aged now. So it's like kind of a silly, like it's very a funny watch. But I used to watch that. I feel like it was like when Netflix started doing streaming. I think that was like one of the movies that they had on there, and I remember I would watch that with my family quite a lot when I was younger, probably like my late elementary school, like early tween phase. And I remember there was like that scene with the dragon that was like just really, I mean, now we would look at it and be like, that is terrible special effects. But like at the time, it was probably revolutionary. So I really liked that movie. I used to watch it a lot as a kid. So I was like, okay, I'll pick that one for nostalgia, kind of quirky. But yeah, that's my number 10, Never Ending Story.
You're gonna be shocked when I say that I actually have never seen the Neverending Story in its entirety.
Wow. I mean, I feel like I get it because I feel like it's kind of a strange, like the movie is kind of set up in a strange way. Like I don't remember every part of it, but I feel like I do remember it being kind of like long and convoluted. So I don't blame you.
I am interested in watching it, the whole thing eventually, but I just never have gotten to it. Like I've only seen parts of it on TV as a kid, but never the whole thing.
Yeah, I feel like it's cute, but it's also, if I recall, it's like kind of sad. There's like a very like emotional scene. Well, I don't want to give anything, and spoiler alert, I don't want to give anything away, but I feel like there was one scene that made me really emotional where this like horse like
That's
died or
that's
like
one of the few scenes that that's one of the few scenes that I know about the horse scene. Yeah, that is really sad.
yeah, that was like a very emotionally scarring as a child. I remember that.
Yeah, but yeah, I will definitely get to it one day. But I'm glad that you really enjoyed it and that it's on your list.
Yeah, I'm excited now. Okay, what's your number 10 then?
So a lot of these, so just a quick disclaimer, a lot of these films are going to be like the famous 80s movies, the ones that everybody has seen and loved. My number 10 is The Breakfast Club.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, what's funny is that I watched this with a friend from college. Both of us are big fans of John Hughes movies, Ferris Bueller's Day Off, Home Alone, other John Hughes movies, Plane, Trains, and Automobiles. And I both of us had seen this movie years before meeting each other, and then we met each other, became friends, And then one day we were just talking about John Hughes movies, and I brought up that I loved The Breakfast Club, and he was like, "Oh, I don't like that movie. It's so boring." And I'm like, "What? What are you talking about?"
That's harsh. Jeez.
Yeah. Yeah, my friends really doesn't like this movie, but I do. I really like how it just, despite being a teen, not necessarily comedy, there are comedic moments, but this is definitely more of a dramatic film. It definitely has some John Hughes cliches and staples in it, but it also feels very different than his other movies. Each we get to really care about each kid, and I especially really liked. I can't remember the character's name, but I especially really liked the Anthony Michael Hall's character, the little kid, the blonde kid who tried to commit suicide with a flare gun. That's really dark saying it,
Yes.
but that is pretty dark and yet strangely humorous at the same time. And that's this movie for me. It's a very dark and at times very like solemn film, but each character we get to really care about each character, and I really love that iconic ending of what was his name, Jughead or something. The actor's name is Judd Nelson, but when he's pounding his fist in the air, that was awesome.
Yeah. Oh, what's his name? Is it? I think I thought it was like Bender or something
Oh, Bender,
weird. No,
Bender.
it's not.
Yes, yes, it's Bender. It's
It is.
Bender.
Is it Bender? Oh,
Yes, the
geez.
character's name is
Yeah,
Bender.
that's awesome.
Yeah, so yeah, my number 10, I really like this one a lot. It's definitely my favorite John Hughes movie. Possibly tied with Home Alone because I love Home Alone a lot, but Home Alone is a 90s movie, not an 80s movie. So for the purpose of this list, The Breakfast Club is on here. But what's your number 9?
Okay, yeah, no, I agree. Also, Home Alone, I looked it up and then I was like, oh man, darn, it's not in the right, time frame. So
Yeah,
a lot of them I had to look up, and a lot of ones that I thought were 80s movies were actually 90s movies. So if you ever
same,
want to do a
same.
90s episode,
Yeah, same. Exactly. Yeah, yeah. There were some films I almost put on this list that actually came out in the 90s. So, yeah, same here.
no, and I totally, you know what? After you sort of talked about the Breakfast Club, I can see where your friend is coming from because I feel like it is sort of a film where like not a lot happens, but it is really just like sort of about doing a character study on all these people and their relationships. I really love that about it. So my number 9, it's not my favorite movie ever actually. It's definitely not a movie that I like go and watch a lot. I think I've only really seen it once and it was like with friends, but I know that a lot of my family members have like a really emotional attachment to this movie. So I was like, oh, you know what? I gotta put this on here, which is Top Gun. My dad was a pilot, so like I was talking to my aunt, and she was like, "Oh my gosh, like your dad took me to see this movie," because my dad's older and she's younger, so she was like, when I was like a kid, he took me to go to the movie theater to see Top Gun. And that was like the most exciting event ever. And he was so excited because he was like, at that point, a teenager and was like, wanted to be a pilot, but hadn't, got his flying license yet or anything. And so she was like, that was like just the most cool event ever. And she was like so excited that the new one is coming out. And yeah, we were talking about that, and I was just like, oh wow, that's such like a cool memory that like I get to hear about them sharing. And so like for me, that's more important than actually seeing Top Gun. But of course, also like Tom Cruise. My mom is like a huge Tom Cruise fan, so that's another thing. I feel like that movie is just like so many like cool family I don't know ideas and like interactions revolve around Top Gun, even though it's not my favorite movie ever. So that's why I decided to put it my number 9.
Well, that's really cool though that your family has a lot of nostalgia or emotional attachment to the film. The same friend that I mentioned who doesn't really like Breakfast Club, he loves Top Gun, and me personally, I think it's just okay. Okay. I love the soundtrack. The action sequences are pretty cool, but the story and characters honestly aren't really that engaging to me. And I don't know, it's just an okay movie for me, but I'm glad that that your family has such a grand emotional attachment to it, though.
Yeah, I feel like they have a lot of lore, but I actually I agree. I feel like the one time, I think I've really only seen it once, and it was sort of like in a group where like we were all chatting and talking and having
Yeah,
fun, but like
right.
I've never really sort of, sat down and watched it. I know it does have like a cool, like, I know a lot of people comment on the soundtrack, and also I took a film class and I think we talked about the sound editing, because apparently like the sound editing for the planes is all like, they did a bunch of like interesting stuff with that. So I remember doing that. So I think you're right. Like, I think the sound aspect of it was like a pretty big deal at the time. But like, yeah, I don't really recall. I feel like I don't even really know the like total story, because when I watched it, I was like, only half watching it. So I totally agree actually on pretty much everything you said. I do love Tom Cruise though. So like, I did like his parts, even though I don't really recall totally what was happening. Of course, I feel like everyone has a crush on Tom Cruise a little bit, maybe. Or maybe that's just me. I don't know.
I
But
love
what was your number 9?
I love
Oh
Tom
no.
Cruise in the Mission Impossible movies, but in a lot of other movies, he's just eh. But my number nine film. So I had to have a Hayao Miyazaki film in my 2000s list, and here I had to have a Hayao Miyazaki film in my 80s list. And so my number 9 is My Neighbor Totoro.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, My Neighbor Totoro is such a great film. A lot of Hayao Miyazaki films don't really have stories. They're more of character studies rather than actual like story like movies with like ongoing narratives. But I really like how we really get to know these two little girls, and we get to see just this childlike imagination essentially come to life for the both of them. Both of them are dealing with their mother's illness, but they're able to still find joy and happiness in life despite some very unhappy circumstances in their family life right now. And I love the cat bus, and Totoro is the single greatest character in a movie ever.
Oh my gosh, I've actually never seen this. I like know what it is, but I've never seen it. But that was a really good review. It sounded like a lot of fun, and that was making me think of a lot of other movies I actually really like.
Yeah,
I should
yeah.
watch
Like
that.
yeah, like Breakfast Club, this is a movie that doesn't really have a story necessarily, but it is still, in my opinion, really engaging because of how it delves into the characters' psychological minds and all that. And Totoro is awesome.
I love that. I honestly really like movies that are just sort of sitting with character. I mean, it doesn't have to be only that, but I really appreciate that. And I appreciate that in books as well. Like just being really, really in depth with a character and sort of exploring them and letting them explore, what's going on inside. I think that's really valuable and really cool. So that's awesome. I should really check it out.
Yeah, it's on I think it's on HBO Max right now. If you get the chance, then yeah, you should definitely watch it.
Totally.
Yeah, so but what's your number 8?
8. Okay, this is a wild card one that is like not as famous as an 80s movie, but it is really, I think it's really funny. It's called Better Off Dead. I don't know if you've heard of it, or if
I've
anyway.
never even heard of that movie.
Okay, yeah, so it's like young John Cusack, and it's like this movie about this guy who his girlfriend breaks up with him, and then he like just sort of goes, it's really kind of horrible. He like goes on these escapades trying to like kill himself. It sounds so morbid and horrible, but like it's all very like comedic. It's like things that would never actually kill you. Like I think he like tries to like ski down like the hill of death or something, and he's like just like, I wish I were dead because everything is so horrible because my girlfriend broke up with me. And that's like the whole sort of thing of the movie, and it's just like very sort of goofy. I don't know. But yeah, it's hilarious.
I love how in a lot of 80s movies, a relationship was like life or death. Like, oh, like my high school girlfriend is definitely the person I'm gonna marry, and if she breaks up with me, then life is over. Or like, oh, my high school boyfriend, blah blah. And it's like these 80 that's one aspect of a lot of 80s movies. It's definitely very, very outdated, for sure. This sounds
That's
like a very outdated movie.
It is. It is. Actually, I'm like trying to think of like some of the other like antics that go on, and I'm like, I feel like a lot of the side characters are probably like now very sort of it's like yeah, just like a very dated. Like I think there's like a foreign exchange student, which is like just like really tropey and like politically incorrect now. I don't even remember some of the other side characters. I just remember this one guy. And I feel like there are some other scenes with side characters that are also just like, oh my gosh, so cringe now. I do remember there's like the one thing that my family does is like there's this guy who like rides around on his bike and he like delivers the paper or something, and then like if you don't pay him he like stalks you. So that's like a whole other side like bar during the whole movie is this guy is like stalking the other guy because he wants his $2 for delivering the newspaper. So my family will always be like, I want my $2. So that's one part of it that has never aged badly. But the rest of it, I agree, it's very dated.
That sounds horrible. That sounds so creepy.
No, it's really funny. It's like a little kid. It's like a teenager.
Okay. I thought that it was like I thought that it was like a guy that was like the same age as the main character or something, but it's just a little kid.
Yeah, I think so. I'm like, I
Okay.
feel like I'm describing this movie so badly because I don't remember it that well, but it's very funny.
This doesn't really sound like a movie that I would necessarily enjoy. I'm not sure if I am going to watch it, but maybe, I don't know.
It's I would say it's pretty dumb. Like I think it's one of those ones that's like very dumb funny. And it's sort of yeah, I feel like it's almost like a sort of satire B movie type take on like the typical 80s movie like Breakfast Club or like 16 Wishes kind of thing. But yeah, I mean it's probably I also probably remember it like being a lot funnier than it was because I watched it a few years ago now. So totally understandable and very valid. I feel like it is if you had to skip one on my thing, it I wouldn't say it would be the one to skip, but it's one of the more skippable ones. What is
Well,
your number 8?
well, maybe I'll check out Better Out Dead, but my number 8 is the best Christmas movie of all time. No, it's people say this is a Christmas movie, but it's really not. It's Die Hard.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Yeah, Die Hard. I mean, there's not really much to say because there's not a lot of character development and the story's kind of weak, but it's just so much fun. Like Bruce Willis back when he was actually trying, Alan Rickman, rest in peace, man, as Hans Gruber. Just yeah, like this movie is just so much fun. It doesn't have depth. It doesn't have great story or character development, but the action sequences are phenomenal. It's quite brutal at times, like surprisingly so. Like every time I watch this movie and we see the glass scene, I cringe. Like oh, like I actually curl up, and I'm like oh yeah. Like this movie actually gets really brutal at times, but overall it's just a lot of fun. And the dad from Family Matters is in it, and which is hilarious to me. And it's what introduced American audiences to the amazing Alan Rickman.
Wow. I gotta say, I didn't know Die Hard was an 80s movie, and I did not expect it to show up. I feel like I really don't love Die Hard at all. I think I've seen it one time, and I saw it with someone who now we are not friends, and
Oh,
we don't like, I don't know, like, maybe I associate it with them, but also like, I I think they were one of those people who said it's a Christmas movie, and I hated that so much. Like when I watched it, and I was like, "This is not a Christmas movie." Like this is, I don't know. But I think we've talked about how I'm not like super into action movie. I used to really like action movies, and then after a while, I just didn't like them as much anymore. So now they're just not my thing. But fair play to you. I'm sorry I don't like it, but I will not be watching it again unless I have to.
No, you're fine. You're totally fine. Yeah, it's your opinion, and my personal opinion is that, well, personally, I really like action movies, but I agree, Die Hard is not really a Christmas movie. People only say it's a Christmas movie because it takes place on Christmas Eve. That's when, Hans Gruber takes over a hotel on Christmas Eve and all that. But yeah, like people say it's a Christmas movie, but it's not. It just so happens to take place on Christmas Eve. But and yeah, like I personally really like action movies a lot, and so I feel like I had to have at least one action movie on this list because the 80s was like also, besides teen comedies, like so many action movies came out in the 80s, but I understand why you may not like this movie as much.
Yeah, I totally agree actually. My next one is an action movie actually. So I guess I can't talk. But I also it might have also been that like I saw Die Hard like much later than a lot of these other movies. So I was sort of just like another action movie. And I feel like I watched it. I think I might have been watching it with these people when it was like we were having a movie marathon or something. So I was just like, oh, here we go again. My number 7 is, of course, I had to have an Indiana Jones movie on here. But actually, when I was a kid, my favorite Indiana Jones was Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. So I feel like that's a very unpopular pick, but that was the one I really liked when I was a kid. I liked when he sort of went to visit those little ghosts in that weird area, and he had a drink from the goblet or whatever. I also really liked Temple of Doom, so I suppose that could be like a runner-up to this one. But I knew I had to have an Indiana Jones movie on here. But I think The Last Crusade, in my memory, that was the one that I like really liked a lot. I think it was probably because he like talked to those ghosts, and it was kind of like a supernatural event, if I recall correctly. But I just thought that was really fun.
So personally, my favorite Indiana Jones is the very first one, Raiders. But Last Crusade is awesome. Like Last Crusade, not enough people, when people are talking about favorite Spielberg movies, not enough people bring up Last Crusade. Like Last Crusade is almost as good in my opinion as Raiders. Like it's a ton of fun. It's really funny. Like Harrison Ford and Sean Connery have great chemistry together. That scene at the end where the lady villain is reaching for a goblet, or not, Holy Grail, the Holy Grail, and then falls, and then Indy's trying to reach for her, and then she falls to her death, and then Indy tries to reach for the Holy Grail, but then his dad convinces him not to, and then so he doesn't. Like, and also that scene that you're talking about where Indy has to drink from the correct Holy Grail, the correct goblet. I really liked. There's so much stuff that I love from Last Crusade, and it's almost my favorite Indiana Jones movie. But on its own, it's a great film.
Wow, I'm glad you thought that. I feel like I thought it would get sort of like a bad rap because
Why?
it's kind of like it's the third one. It's sort of like I feel like it's more sort of like. Well, actually, no. Raiders is also pretty like supernatural and like metaphysical. But I feel like I don't know. For some reason, I always thought like, oh, Last Crusade's a little bit more like I don't know, just kind of like ghost-y. I don't know. So I thought, oh, maybe it'll get like not people won't like it as much because it's like the third one. By that point, they've gotten the point, and it seems kind of off base. But I also really liked the part where he threw the like sand across the leap of faith thing. That was so fun.
That was cool.
I forgot about that until right now. That was really
that was
fun.
cool,
But yeah, I'm really glad you liked it though.
Yeah, my number seven film. So your number seven is Last Crusade. My number seven is stars the late great Robin Williams, but it's probably not the Robin Williams film that you think. My number seven is Dead Poet Society.
Very cool, very cool. I kept seeing that on like when I was looking up 80s movies, but I've never seen Dead Poet Society and I really want to see it and I've needed to see it for so long, so I can't wait to hear about it.
The two quotes, Carpe Diem, seize the day, and Oh Captain, My Captain, were made famous. That this movie didn't create those quotes, but they were made famous by this movie. And basically, this movie is about a bunch of boys at an all boys boarding school, a bunch of young men who attend this a very strict religious all boys boarding school, and Robin Williams is hired as a teacher there, and he inspires the boys to basically, not be constrained by like rules and like their parents' expectations for them and by societal pressures and all that. And he basically convinces them to, be free and live life to the fullest. And it's a film when people talk about Robin Williams movies, a lot of people of our generation and like younger generations don't really talk about this movie that much, and I think that that's a darn shame because this movie is great, and without spoiling anything, the ending had me sobbing.
Yeah, I feel like I've gotten a lot of spoilers because I always joke that I'm the one English major in the world who hasn't seen Dead Poets Society. So I feel like all my friends have like talked about it, and so I think I know what happens at the end. But oh my gosh, it's like it seems like so much like the type of movie I would really love. I don't even know how I've gone this long without seeing it, but I really want to see it. So I think that was an awesome pick.
Yeah, thank you. Well, what's your number six film?
Okay, my number six. I'm looking at this and I'm like, wow, I have like my list is so heavy on like 1989. Like so many of them are 1989. So
I
this
mean,
one is
that was a
80.
great year for movies, so I don't blame you.
Well, good. I hope so. I feel like this is this really stereotypical pick though. When Harry Met Sally, hilarious, kind of just goofy. It's like a funny sort of I don't know. I again with my little enemies to lovers trope thing going on. I feel like I have a theme here.
Yeah, when Harry Met Sally, I don't love that film as much as other people do, but I think, it's really cute, it's really funny. Billy Crystal and Meg Ryan have really good chemistry. I don't love Nora Ephron's movies, but this one, like, I think this one, her writing is pretty strong, and I think what helps is Rob Reiner's pretty good directing, and also Carrie Fisher and what was his name? Bruno something. Basically, the people who play the best friends of Harry and Sally. One of them, the
Yeah.
Meg Ryan's best friend, is played by Carrie Fisher, and Billy Crystal's best friend is played by Bruno something. The actor's name is I can't remember the actor's name, but basically, it's funny because the two best friends fall in love, get married, and have kids way quicker than Harry and Sally fall in love and get married and all that. And and Harry and Sally know each other way longer. The best friends only know each other because of Harry and Sally. And so I find that whole subplot hilarious. And Carrie Fisher, rest in peace to her too, man. Oh,
Totally. Oh my gosh. Yeah, you're so right. Wow, I think I'm gonna watch it again soon because I was telling my friend about it and she actually hasn't seen it. And yeah, I feel like I've only seen it one time, I think, maybe twice, maybe twice. But yeah, it's just one of those. I feel like it's one of those classic movies, especially in terms of like when I was looking up kind of rom coms. I was like, a lot of the rom coms that I thought were 80s movies are actually 90s movies. So I'm like, I'm no rom-com historian, but I'm like, I feel like a lot of them follow in the vein of When Harry Met Sally. So good sort of classic film.
yeah. It,
Yeah,
it, it is definitely a classic for a reason. But
totally.
But my number six, this is actually another Hayao Miyazaki film, Kiki's Delivery Service.
Amazing. I've also never seen this one, but I've heard a lot of good things about it.
Yeah, Kiki's Delivery Service has even less of a story than Spirited Away and My Neighbor Totoro. This is probably Hayao Miyazaki's most laid back and relaxed movie, I guess, for lack of a better term. There isn't really a conflict or story until like the last like 30 minutes of the movie. The majority of the movie is just this 12 or 13-year-old witch in training named Kiki who decides that she wants to go explore the world and live on her own. And her parents are like, "Oh yeah, go ahead, have fun." And I'm watching this movie and I'm like, "You're 13. You shouldn't be going out on your own yet." But the movie is really great. Kiki is such a fantastic main character. I love the cat. The cat provides excellent comedic relief and never gets annoying or tired. Like I really like the cat Kiki. It's really fun to watch Kiki. A majority of this movie is just Kiki interacting with people in this small village and delivering like food or presents or whatever to them. And it's like that's basically 75% of this movie is just us seeing Kiki deliver stuff to people and meet people and yet it's so compelling and like I said there is a conflict that comes up in the last like 30 minutes of this movie, but the entire movie is fantastic and it's thanks to gorgeous animation and how great Hayao's writing is and how interesting and likable Kiki is as the main character.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that sounds so fun. I really need to like watch more of these. I feel like I've only seen like the really, really, really classic ones, but this
Right.
sounds like so fun.
Yeah, this is a really fun movie despite not a lot happening and it has a very thin like story, but it's still a compelling story and an extremely enjoyable film. But what's your number five pick?
Okay, my number five pick, I'm calling it. This is gonna be the weirdest thing on the list tonight. It's not, I don't even know if it counts as a movie. Actually, it probably doesn't. It's like an animated short, it's not a short film. I suppose it is a short film. It's like a half hour film. And it's one of those animated Dr. Seuss shorts, which I don't know if this was part, like, it's very interesting. Apparently, these aren't part of like everyone's childhood, but for me and my brother, like, they were like the thing we would always watch. And there was one that we had on tape, and it was from 1980, and it was called Pantoffel Pock, Where Are You? And it's like this, it's really, I actually just did a project on it for, I took a class on the 1001 Nights, the like really big collection of stories from the Middle East. We like sort of went through all these different stories, and then we had to do a project at the end. And I did a project sort of talking about how Pantoffel Pock is like this very dated cartoon that like uses all of this sort of like orientalist and like racist imagery to like, but it like steals a lot of stuff from the 1001 Nights. Like it steals a lot of like the Aladdin tropes, but it like uses them in a way that like is very interesting political messaging at the time, that's for sure. So I will admit, like, it's super dated but for me and my brother, I mean, it was like the most weird romp. It's like this, it's so strange because I don't think there was ever a book of it. Like Dr. Seuss just went and made this little thing, and it's like this guy gets a magic piano and just goes around everywhere and does stupid stuff, and that's really it. But we used to watch that so much, and it's like so strange to me that it's like completely fallen out of like popular knowledge at all. And so that is my number five, because we had that on tape and we would watch that, I mean, all the time.
Yeah, I've never heard of this at all. Like I'm surprised that this even exists based on like how you're describing it.
I mean, it's so weird. It's just one of those things that is like, who thought of this and what in the world is going on? But you can watch it for free. I think it's on like YouTube or Vimeo or not Vimeo, what am I, Daily Motion or whatever the one that's free is. I think it's on YouTube. I think that's where I looked it up and watched it for my project. But it's just really interesting and like strange, but like yeah, it was really cool to do like an analysis project on it. But it also, all the Dr. Seuss shorts from like the 70s and 80s have like really great music. And so it's like kind of a pseudo musical that has a lot of like silly songs, and it's just like such a strange trip, but it's like really funny like to go back and like sing along to these weird songs and like watch this man fly around on his magic piano. Yeah, it's just really strange and weird. But what's your number 5?
So my number 5 is a film that almost no one that I am friends with talks about, and yet at the time it came out, this film was extremely successful at the box office, and it even won 8 Oscars, including Best Picture, Director, and Actor. It's Amadeus.
Awesome. Okay, good pick. Wow.
Yeah, this film I've actually never seen. So there's two versions of this film. There's one version where it's like 2.5 hours and it's rated PG, and then there's a 3 hour version of this film that's rated R. And the reason for the R rating is because of a couple of sexual scenes in it. But yeah, I've only seen the R-rated version, so I don't know what the PG-rated version is like, but I really enjoyed the 3 hour version. Yeah, it's basically it's a very it's one of those sort of not alternate history films, but basically Amadeus is basically uh, telling a story about a possibly real but also possibly fictitious rivalry between Mozart and Antonio Salieri. You know, everyone knows who Mozart is, but not when you say Antonio Salieri, people are like, who? Well, Salieri was also a very talented, classically trained pianist, and basically the film tells this story about how Salieri hated Mozart and basically how Salieri supposedly killed Mozart, and it's a story about how Mozart is discovered, but Salieri was already still performing for like the Kingdom of Germany Germany, but yeah, Salieri basically fades into obscurity, and Mozart's fame starts to grow and grow because of how talented and wacky he is. And it's a very interesting movie. The movie doesn't tell us because the filmmakers probably don't even know whether this story is even true or not, but it's a very compelling story, and it won 8 Oscars, all deservedly so, in my opinion.
Yeah, no kidding. I like saw that it was on sort of the lists of 80s movies, but I didn't really even like think of it that much until you said it. I had to watch it for a class, like a music class. And I'm guessing I was pretty young, so I'm guessing they had us watch the PG version. But it was still a little raunchy if I recall. Like I remember having to get a permission slip signed. Yeah, no, I didn't know that it had won a bunch of Oscars, but like I can see why, because it was really well done. Like I definitely like it was so creepy. I remember so many of the shots just being really like frightening as like
Yeah,
I think I was a middle schooler.
yeah, it is a very
Yeah,
it does have a very like eerie tone, not scary, but like very eerie tone to it, and it does get very suspenseful at times, especially towards the third act.
yeah, no, I totally agree. I feel like I was gonna use the exact same word, like eerie, like at the end, sort of when there's. I mean, I don't want to give anything away, but there were like two scenes besides the really like raunchy scene that I remember being like 12 and being like, what the heck am I seeing? Besides that scene, the two scenes that I remember were like toward the end and just like really kind of like creepy and like not like you didn't know what was gonna happen, and like it was very eerie. Yeah, that's a really good pick. That's a good pick.
Yeah, I really enjoy this one a lot, and that's why it's my number five. But what's your number four?
My family and I would go on these trips to this lake, and at the lake there was a television that only had a VHS player. Like it had no sort of satellite, and I don't even know if the DVD player like worked. I think there was a DVD player, but it was like very sketchy. So we had all these like random VHS things, and every time we would go to the lake, that's what we would watch. And so I remember when my brother and I were probably like young tweens-ish, we did not want to go to the lake sometimes because we had to go out there like a lot actually. We would just be doing work, like cleaning up leaves and like mowing the lawn and stuff. Like it was sometimes it was just upkeep of the lake house. And it would be like in the fall, like when you couldn't swim or anything. And so we would be like, don't take us to the lake, not the lake. And we would sit there in the basement and watch the same few VHS tapes over and over and over again. And this was one of the VHS tapes we had. Who's Harry Crumb? It's just like this kind of weird, like, I don't know if it's like a very popular John Candy movie, but like I feel like it's kind of like weird and silly. I mean, all of them are, but like in a way that's like not. I don't think it was as popular as Uncle Buck, if I'm correct. And like it was just sort of like a strange like movie that's like kind of out of like common knowledge, but we would watch that like multiple times. We watched like every night.
I've never even heard of that one. Like, yeah,
Really?
I've seen a lot of John Candy movies actually, including Uncle Buck, Planes, Trains, and Automobiles I mentioned earlier. But Who's Harry Crumb? I've never even heard of that one.
Oh my gosh, you have to watch it. That is a really funny movie. It's just silly and weird. It's like he's a detective. That's sort of the whole shtick. But he's kind of a bad detective, and like that's where it starts. And then like he gets put on some case because like they don't have anyone else to do it or something, and so he gets like kind of wound up in solving this mystery that he's really just not good at solving mysteries. We would just sit there and we would watch that all the time. So that is very much a nostalgia, very much a classic. But you should watch it. It's very funny and very like I feel like it's one of the ones that like people don't talk about a lot, but it's hilarious.
Considering that that is one of the few John Candy movies I haven't seen, I will check it out. Oh, and I still have to check out. I still haven't watched He's Just Not That Into You. I'll check that out as well.
Oh yeah, I forgot that. But
Yeah.
yeah, definitely those two are a lot of fun. Also, wait, yeah, what's your number four?
So my number four is a film that no one has heard of, E.T. the Extraterrestrial. And clearly I'm joking because everyone has heard of this movie. Even if you haven't seen it, you've at least heard of it.
Totally, totally.
This film is a classic for a reason. It's so well written. I really love how the main character is Elliot and not any of the adults. And also this movie introduced the world to Drew Barrymore and Steven Spielberg. Yeah, this was Drew Barrymore's very first movie that she ever did. She played
I
the
didn't know that.
Yeah, she played the little sister. But yeah, like Steven Spielberg is he's known as the sentimental magical director, and that is definitely a compliment that praise that he gets from many people, and it's because of how like magical and emotional in a good way this film gets, and the score by John Williams is fantastic, and most of the effects really hold up. And without spoiling anything, the ending makes me cry every time.
Oh my gosh, that's a great pick. I haven't seen ET in so long. I saw it so long ago that I almost barely remember the ending, which is so bad. I remember like specific scenes, I feel like, but I don't remember like I mean, of course I remember the classic scenes. But
Right.
yeah, no, that's a good pick. I didn't know that was Drew Barrymore's like debut.
Yeah, it was Drew Barrymore's debut, and Henry Thomas, who plays the main character Elliot, he would go on to be in The Haunting of Hill House, which is a great horror show on Netflix, and also The Haunting of Bly Manor on Netflix as well. But yeah, like E.T. It's a great it's a great movie. It does have a couple of outdated effects, and some of the supporting characters, I guess, could have been fleshed out. Like his brother definitely could have been fleshed out a bit more. But overall, I really love this movie a lot, and I'm really curious now. Uh, quite a few films that you've mentioned are films that I've never even heard of. So I'm really curious now to see if I've heard of your number three.
Oh my gosh, I know. I'm really excited to get into the top three. I feel like this is going to be fun. Yeah, because I'm surprised. Like I thought that like the both of us sort of having a similar concept of like the 80s and like the popular 80s movies and sort of like what what the 80s are to us, like our parents. I'm surprised that we haven't had overlap, I think, yet. So I don't want to spoil anything for your list or my list, so I won't say what's coming next. But like, yeah, I'm surprised that there hasn't been. I don't think we've had any overlap at all yet that I can recall. So this is going to be exciting to see what the top three are. But I feel like my top three are all pretty obvious answers. Like I don't think I would be able to like do this list without saying these three. And of course, my number three, Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, which is
Excellent.
I mean, yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, what can you say? This is such a fun movie. It's so goofy. It really holds up. I feel like even the newer ones, I feel like yeah, all of them like still hold up pretty well. They're like really funny. Uh, Keanu Reeves is hilarious as Ted. I mean, I love that guy. I mean, yeah, they just have such good chemistry, like on screen, and they're sort of both. I love how like they're sort of both like dumb, and like I mean, in my mind, I would say probably Bill is like more the mastermind, but like they don't. They're not really like both like different types. So, like they're both very similar, and I think it's a really funny sort of dynamic my best friend just walked through. We were Bill and Ted for Halloween this year. So
Nice,
if that gives you any idea.
nice. Man, I wish I had a best friend who I could be Bill and Ted with. I would definitely want to be Ted though.
Yeah, I was Ted, but she's blonde. She's blonde and short compared to me, and I have dark hair and I'm tall. So it was meant to be. But no, yeah. I also love like I mean that it has so many good like quotes. The strange things are afoot at the Circle K. I mean, come on, who can come up with
Yeah, and rest in peace, George Carlin. George Carlin as Rufus. Two thumbs up.
Oh yeah, I mean definitely, obviously. Oh my gosh, that's such a good movie. It's just so wholesome and like silly, and like it has so many great bits. But what's your number three?
So my number three is Spike Lee's magnum opus, Do the Right Thing.
Nice, nice, good choice. I actually have never. I feel like I've read about this for like classes and stuff, but I've never actually watched it.
Do the Right Thing is a film that is unfortunately still relevant today. Do the Right Thing, obviously, it tackles racism like all of Spike Lee's movies do. It tackles racism. It tackles what's the term? Gerrymandering, I think that's what the term is called. It addresses police brutality. The whole third act of Do the Right Thing is extremely disturbing and heartbreaking to watch. And this is a film that is unfortunately more relevant today than it was in the 80s, and it was already relevant in the 80s, unfortunately. And this is an extremely educational and well made, but also difficult film to watch. But it is great, and it's Spike Lee's best film in my opinion, and it's my number three pick.
Yeah, that's a really good pick. I actually, I yeah, I need to watch it. I feel like I was talking to someone and they were talking about having seen it because it was like part of a class for them, I think, which makes sense because it is like so relevant. I really need to see it because I've heard great things about it, but I've just never watched it.
Yeah, I will warn you though that it does get really difficult to watch at times though. So just warning you, about that.
Yeah, definitely, definitely.
What's your number two pick?
Okay, my number two. When you said this is the best Christmas movie, this is what I thought you were going to say. National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation is 89, and it is. I mean, I think actually this past Christmas, I don't think I watched it in full because I was just like, I've seen this so many times. But like up until last Christmas, I think we would watch it like basically once a week during like the Christmas season. This is like my family, probably one of our favorite Christmas movies. Yeah, I mean it's so funny. It's always on TV at Christmas. It's everywhere.
Yeah, this movie and Home Alone are like always playing on TV around Christmas time, and the scene where Chevy Chase thinks that he's gonna get a big raise or promotion from his boss or like the company that he works at, and then he ends up just getting like a free like a coupon or something, and then he starts getting so mad and freaking out. That scene is just hilarious, and his whole rant ends with, I think it ends with, "Where's the Tylenol?" or something. Basically, it's
Yeah, where's the time?
yeah, it's really funny, and it is a really great Christmas movie. Didn't make it on my list personally, but that doesn't mean that I didn't like it. I really do like that movie a lot, and but I am disappointed in myself though because this past Christmas I tried to rewatch as many Christmas movies as possible, but also around Christmas, Soul and Wonder Woman 1984 came out, so I didn't actually get the chance to rewatch National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation, and I'm kicking myself for not doing that.
Honestly, I feel like you can watch it. Yeah, I feel like it's one of those ones where like, yeah, it's a Christmas movie and it's obviously a Christmas movie, but like, yeah, when I like thought of the 80s, I was like, is that the 80s? Because if it is, I totally it really gives me a feeling of the 80s. I don't know. I feel like it's
Right.
a very funny nostalgia film.
Yeah, no, yeah, this film is definitely nostalgic to me for sure. And but this next film on my list is really gives me nostalgia. And this film is part of a franchise I still love to this day. It's my favorite Star Wars film, The Empire Strikes Back. I love this film so much. I love the first film, A New Hope, was a great, fun, grand adventure film. But this film like really raised the stakes. It's a lot darker than A New Hope. It has, in my opinion, the greatest plot twist of all time. No, I am your father. And then Luke just being absolutely devastated by that. Yeah, what's it called? And I really love this movie introduced Yoda, and every single line that Yoda says is perfect. And despite him being a puppet, Yoda felt like such a real character to me. And this movie basically gave everyone depth. And also the scene where Han gets frozen in kryptonite is also very emotionally devastating to me. Every time I watch it, I'm like, no, Han, no.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing. Honestly, I I feel like I've seen all the Star Wars films, but like either I've seen them a really long time ago or I've just seen them like in passing. I don't think I've ever sat down and like had a Star Wars marathon or something like that. So maybe I should rewatch it.
Yeah, no, like I haven't had a Star Wars, I haven't done a Star Wars marathon in a while, but I am definitely gonna do one again. Or maybe not, I don't know, because I really don't want to rewatch Rise of Skywalker. That was just bad. But Empire is great, and I'm really curious now to hear what your number one is.
Okay, so I kept this a secret because I didn't want to, I didn't want to like give away my number one right from the start. But my number one is your number 10. It's The Breakfast Club. I watched it when I was a teenager, and it was just one of those, like, I watched it and I was like, oh, that's what I want to do. Like, I want to write things that make characters come alive and, like, people feel that they're real to them. Like, I just thought it's so compelling, just, like, the way that they feel so real.
I'm so happy that just like with our 2000s list and where we both had the same number 4 of Eternal Sunshine, I'm so happy that we shared another film. Dude, like, oh, that's so great. I'm so happy that you have Breakfast Club on your list.
I know. I feel like to me it is like the quintessential 80s movie, and it's like, yeah, I mean, yeah, it is like the John Hughes movie that I feel like I know the best and like the best. But like it's so, yeah. And also I was also, when you were saying you really liked the Anthony Michael Hall character, I think his name's Brian.
Brian. Yeah.
I love that guy. I love Anthony Michael Hall. He was so great. He did so much hilarious stuff, but I really love him as Brian. I think my favorite scene probably is the one, I feel like it gets memed a lot, and that's like why I like latched onto it, I think, is the one where they're like, he's like, what is the ruckus? And Brian goes like, can you describe the ruckus, sir? Or something like that. I think that is like so funny. I just love that movie, and it's such a cute romp, but it's also like, yeah, I feel like you really get to like, these characters come alive to you. It's so interesting. It's so fun.
Man, I'm just happy that we had another overlap. Like
I know.
I was honestly thinking that like we would have completely different films for our lists, but no, we shared one, and I'm really happy about that.
Me too. I know. I was so surprised that we didn't share more, but I think we both had pretty good picks. So I'm really curious now to hear your number one.
Yeah, I'm really surprised that my number 1 film wasn't on your list at all. To me, this is the quintessential 80s movie, and it's not only my favorite 80s movie, it's one of my favorite movies of all time. It's Back to the Future.
Wait, so at the beginning when I said I almost had Back to the Future as my number 10, we would have swapped our number 1s and number 10s. That would have been so funny.
Yeah, that would have been funny, but oh well. But yeah, I really love this movie a lot. It definitely has some outdated moments to it, and there's a lot of people nowadays, in our very politically correct, progressive kind of culture, where a lot of people nowadays are criticizing Back to the Future for being very outdated and not very politically correct at times. And yeah, I definitely see where they're coming from, and they are right, but I still love this movie anyway. Like, it's so much fun. Every single character is interesting and funny at times, and the score by Alan Silvestri is amazing. The effects still quite hold up to this day. Doc Brown is just Christopher Lloyd is amazing. And yeah, I just really love this movie.
No, I think you're right. I feel like honestly between the two of us, like me being like, oh, The Breakfast Club is the quintessential 80s movie, and you saying Back to the Future is the quintessential 80s movie, I feel like they're very different in a lot of ways. But I feel like the two of those, like, to me, are like, yeah, those are like, when you think of an 80s movie, that's what you think of. I totally agree with your assessment, and I think that is a great movie. I haven't seen it in so long. I really need to see it again soon. But I don't know if you've seen the John Mulaney like bit that he does on Back to the Future. That's really funny. You should see it.
Yeah. John Mulaney. Oh, John Mulaney is so funny. But yeah, no, like Back to the Future, I just love that movie so much, and like literally, I've seen that movie like probably like over like 8 times at this point, like 8 or 9 times, and every single time that the climax where Marty and Doc are trying to get the DeLorean to be hit by lightning just at the right second is so intense. And literally every time, even though I've seen the movie before, I'm like on the edge of my seat, like, oh my gosh, Marty, get back to the future, and all that stuff. And I love how on the nose the title drop is in that movie, where Doc Brown is literally, he's just like, next Saturday night, we're sending you back to the future. And actually, a fun fact about that movie is that that's actually was done on purpose. Like, the studio would only agree to have the movie be called Back to Future if the title was actually said like in the movie. So
Oh, I didn't know that. That's really funny though.
yeah,
That's awesome.
there's also a whole other backstory to uh, Robert Zemeckis, who would later direct Forrest Gump, who fighting the studio over the title of the movie. But that's a longer story, so uh, I'll that's for another time. Or you can look it up on like Wikipedia or IMDb trivia or whatever if you want to know the story of Robert Zemeckis clashing with Universal Pictures over what the title of the movie should be called. But I'm really glad that it was called Back to Future and not that other title. But yeah, Back to the Future, it's a really great movie, and in my opinion, I think Back to the Future and Breakfast Club, you're right that they're both the two most quintessential 80s movies. Although I guess you could say Ferris Bueller is a quintessential 80s movie too, but yeah, like Back to the Future for me is just an amazing movie, and where I can easily overlook its flaws and issues and just have a great time watching it.
Yeah, totally. And I totally agree with you about Ferris Bueller. I was like, I've never seen the full thing of Ferris Bueller, so I was like, I can't put it on my list. But yeah, there were actually a lot of movies where it was like, I was like, this would be a great one, but I actually haven't seen the full thing. Like, I've only seen it in pieces, so I don't feel like great about putting it on my list. But like the Goonies, I've never seen the Goonies all the way through. I've just only seen it like in passing. And I feel like there was another one. Oh, I've never seen Stand By Me. That was another one where I was like, I feel like that's a good honorable. I feel like all of I'm doing the honorable mentions list, but no, I agree. Ferris Bueller is like the third quintessential 80s movie. And I always used to mix up Matthew Broderick with Michael J. Fox. To me, I was like, they look so similar.
Oh, I don't think that they look similar at all, personally. But Stands By Me was actually my number 11 pick. It almost made it on the list, but then I decided to put Breakfast Club on instead. But yeah, Stand By Me is like number like 11 for me. But
Okay.
but yeah, but yeah, like all these movies are movies that I really enjoy and that define for me personally the 80s as a decade. It is a really remarkable decade for me personally to look at and look back on, even though I wasn't actually born in the 80s. I find it really fun to just talk about not just 80s movies, but just like 80s like culture and stuff in general. And it's not just me, like Stranger Things is such a hit because of, the 80s nostalgia and all that. And yeah, like I really enjoyed talking about 80s movies with you, and want to thank you again for being on the podcast.
Oh my gosh, no, thank you so much. I totally agree. I feel like the 80s are really like an interesting time that I feel like right now everyone is really nostalgic about. So this is really fun to like sort of go through. And yeah, I loved all of our picks. Like I feel like that was like a really I feel like it's a yeah, like I think you said this earlier, like it's a little bit easier to like sort of pick okay, these are the ones that are like obviously awesome and I like really really liked them. And so I feel like that was like it was really fun to to get to do this. So thanks for having me. It was great.
Yeah, no, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, this was a ton of fun. And thank you all for listening to another episode of my podcast, Podcast Racing. And one more thing for all of you guys listening right now is that what you just listened to is actually the season 2 finale of Podcast Racing. I am going to be taking in approximately about a couple of months. I'm going to take a break from the podcast, and then the season 3 premiere of Podcast Racing will premiere sometime in July. I want to thank you all again for listening and for being so supportive. And yeah, I really look forward to seeing you guys again in July. And thanks again for listening to another episode of Podcast Racing. Bye.